Four ways in which the nation of Kenya can address the current debt challenges or crisis that is facing currently. What do I mean? For every 100 shillings that the Kenya Revenue Authority collects, close to 72 shillings of that goes towards debt repayment. You agree with me? That may not be sustainable, and that's why we need to have this conversation. Welcome. Now, by mid-2025, the total debt in this country was close to 11.1 trillion Kenya shillings. What does that mean? That means close to 70% of our GDP, which stands at around 13 trillion Kenya shillings, was debt. Now, close to 60% of all our revenue goes towards debt repayment. You agree with me? That may not be sustainable, and that's why we are having this conversation. Therefore, welcome. Let's journey together. Again, this is Vastock Global, and at Vastock Global, we say we are here transforming nations, and this is where vision meets execution. Now, we shall be sharing with you 4 practical ways that this nation can undertake to address the current debt position. Work with us. Now, we said our debt position is at 11.1 trillion Kenya shillings. What's a breakdown? We are saying 54% of that, or close to 6.1 trillion Kenya shillings, is from domestic debt. That is debt that the nation has incurred from internal sources. That could be the treasury bonds that you see, the treasury bills that you see. The other component of our debt is what we call the external debt, what this nation has borrowed from other nations. This could be in form of what we call the multilateral debts, either from the World Bank, IMF, or other facilities. We also have what we call bilateral debts from one nation to the other. We know that currently China is the greatest or the biggest lender to the nation of Kenya. Of course, we have Japan. We also have under the external debt some commercial loans and international sovereign bonds, or what we call the Euro bonds. That has been quite famous, and in one of our discussions, we shall be seeing what is a Euro bond and why is it important for you as a Kenya to understand what was the entire concept about the Euro bond. Now, welcome, and let's journey together. In the just concluded finance bill, which is now law, the government has a budget of close to 4.29 trillion Kenya shillings. What does that mean? That the government of Kenya plans to spend 4.29 trillion Kenya shillings. However, we anticipate that the Kenya Revenue Authority will only collect 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings. What does that tell you? That we have a deficit of close to 923 billion Kenya shillings. So we have what we call a fiscal deficit of close to 923 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, out of that 923, this is what the government proposes, that we shall borrow domestically close to 635 billion Kenya shillings, and we shall also borrow externally close to 287 or 88 billion Kenya shillings. Again, I'll recap that we have a budget for next year from 2025 June or July to 2026 June that the government of Kenya plans to spend 4.3 trillion Kenya shillings. However, the much that the Kenya Revenue Authority will be able to collect, or what we anticipate they are able to collect, is 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings. Of course, we know sometimes they've not fully met that mark. However, we anticipate that this year there will be a fiscal deficit of close to 923 billion Kenya shillings. So the conversation of debt and borrowing is important, and every Kenyan, and you watching, it's important that you walk this journey to comprehend why it's important for a nation to be able to manage their debt position. Let's also check another fact. Last year, that is the year 2024 to 2025, the year that ended on 30th of June this year, KRA managed to collect 2.57 trillion Kenya shillings. That is a mark record collection, and we say hongera to them. However, when you check on what they collected, close to 1.85 went towards debt repayment. What does that tell you? Close to 72% of what KRA was able to collect last year went towards debt repayment. Now, look at it this way. Assuming a family that earns 10,000 Kenya shillings, however, 7,200 goes towards debt repayment. What does that mean? That family is only left with 2,800 to take care of their other needs, including their recurrent expenditure, maybe pay rent, get food, pay school fees, and do development. You agree with me? That's not sustainable. And that's why we are having this conversation. Once again, this is Vasto Global. And at Vasto Global, we say we are transforming nations. And this is where vision meets execution. Now, let's work together. Having seen that challenge, what is it as a nation we are able to do? We are proposing 4 things that we are able to undertake and reverse the challenges that we have. Number 1 is growth, and we shall be explaining. Number 2 is reforms in our expenditure. Number 3 is loan restructuring. And number 4 is total war on corruption. Now, let's look at growth. I'll use the same example that I gave you earlier. Assuming that family that earns 10,000 Kenya shillings with 7,200 shillings going towards debt repayment, if their income or the income of that family was to be increased to 20,000 shillings, it would mean now that family will be left with 12,000. And if that revenue of that family or that earning of that family went to 30,000, it would mean that they would be left with close to 22,000 shillings for their own consumption. And that's the conversation that we are having, that as a nation, we need to urgently expand our GDP from the current 13 trillion Kenya shillings to approximately 20 to 26. Now, I invite you to watch our other conversations that we've had on how this nation is able to double their GDP within a period of less than 5 years. Watch it, and it's a conversation that we can have. Other nations have done it, and we are able to do. Now, for us to expand the economy, there are things that we must do as a matter of urgency. Number 1 is the area of industrialization and manufacturing. In fact, one of the case studies is the case study of Vietnam. Now, Vietnam was able to triple their GDP within a period of 15 years by more than 300%. And their focus was in the area of manufacturing and industrialization. So it's doable. Other nations have done it. And for Kenya, it's a high time we took the special economic zones as a very serious and urgent issue. In our previous video, we shared how that the Jebel Ali Free Zone in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai has a GDP greater than Kenya. That one special economic zone in 2023, they had a GDP of close to 160 billion US dollars, whereas the GDP of Kenya in US dollars was just 120 billion US dollars. So we are saying special economic zones attracting foreign direct investment in the areas of tech, manufacturing, and other areas. It's something that we have to do as a matter of urgency to address the challenges that we are having. Of course, we cannot talk more about agriculture, issues to do with digital space, tech, and all that. So we are saying number 1 is growth. Number 2 is the issue of debt restructuring. Now, this is a very dicey issue for 2 reasons. Number 1, when a nation tries to engage in restructuring their debt, of course, it raises their credit risk. And people will be seeing that there is a possibility that the nation of Kenya can easily default on their loans. But that's not the conversation that we are having. It's possible to have that conversation, either the discussion around the interest rate or the repayment. However, from Vasto Global, we may not fully advocate for these route because, of course, we know the longer you repay the loans, the higher the interest rate that you shall be repaying. So we still insist on the issues to do with growth. Now, number 3 is the expenditure. You will be surprised that out of the 4.3 trillion Kenya shillings, close to 73% of that amount will go into what we call recurrent expenditure. Now, what's recurrent expenditure? This is the cost of running government, the salaries and the payments, the travel and all that. It's only close to 600 billion Kenya shillings that will go into development. Now, that's a account that is already in vast. We should be doing more expenditure when it comes to development because we are a developing country rather than on recurrent expenditure. Now, this is where austerity measures are required as a matter of urgency. There needs to be no wastage in government. We need to run a lean government. We need to ensure that there is no wastage at all in government. For example, that family that was only left with 2,800 shillings should be having a very strict way of spending that 2,800 shillings. And that's what we are saying, that the government needs to come up with some austerity measures to ensure that the government expenditure is put on check. We don't have room for luxury whenever we are in a distress. That's a reality. So debt, addressing our debt, we need to look at how we also spend the money that we are left with. Now, the next issue, we had said there are 4 in number, is the issue of corruption. Now, we can stay here for the entire session. Statistics are out there that the nation of Kenya loses close to 2 billion shillings daily. That translates close to 700 billion Kenya shillings annually. Now, remember I told you that we anticipate that as a nation, we shall have a deficit in our budget of close to 923 billion Kenya shillings. Yet, in the same year, unless we address the corruption issue, we shall lose close to 700 billion Kenya shillings. It's not sustainable. And we need to address the issue of corruption by all means. So that's a conversation that we are having. Again, we were sharing with you some 4 practical ways that the nation of Kenya needs to address the current debt crisis. And we say number 1, growth. Number 2, we need to have a conversation on restructuring our debt. Number 3 is the issue of expenditure. Now, growth and expenditure are factors that are within government, purview of the government. Then number 4 is total war on corruption. So we've told you the pillars that will be able to get us out of where we are. We've said number 1, growth. 2, relooking at our expenditure. Number 3 is having a candid conversation on how we are able to restructure our loans. Then number 4 is total war on corruption. Now, for all these things to happen, there are a few things that have to be done as a matter of urgency. So let's consider them. Number 1, we need strong political will to have this done. We need to have aggressive marketing and opening up our infrastructure. We need to have better fiscal management or how we manage our budgets. It is possible, but requires private sector-led growth. It requires export-oriented production. It requires debt sustainability and reforms, and a non-negotiable anti-corruption agenda. I'll repeat that again. A non-negotiable anti-corruption agenda. So I invite you, we have this conversation, hoping that we are able to transform the nations. Once again, welcome to Vasto Global. At Vasto Global, we say, this is where we transform nations, and this is where vision meets execution. Thank you, and let's have the conversation.